and welcome to the Heathen Wyrdos Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about how to avoid the alt-right pipeline and discussing things of this nature through a pagan lens. If you haven't listened to our Red Flags and Dog Whistles episode, I would perhaps recommend listening to that first before this one so we're all roughly on the same page. But no worries if you don't have time for that because we're about to get stuck in. My name is Sif, my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Theo, my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Kenna, my pronouns are she, her.
Does anyone want to go ahead and define the term alt-right pipeline?
So you know when you have some pipelines, there might be two to the right, not the first one, but the second one, that's the alternate right pipeline.
Wow, so informative.
I cope with humor. I'm really sorry I didn't plan on that, but...
No, it's fine. To define it for the alt-right pipeline, and when we say alt-right, we are referring to the political alt-right and stuff like that, not extra pipes to the right, even though it was funny. It is particularly referring to the slow radicalization of the individuals through online materials and spaces. Yeah, I think we all know that the alt-right have a considerable presence in pagan spaces, and it's not difficult to find those spaces. I could probably go find one within a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Without actually trying to find one.
Yeah, you will likely find them. If you are looking for anything, you will likely find that first.
Yeah, there was a reason I was a solitary practitioner for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's because too many spaces I was finding, things have definitely changed in the last few years. Or have started to. I'm not saying these places don't exist in abundance, but too many places either or that, or if they weren't alt-right, they tolerated the existence of the alt-right amongst their midst.
Amongst their mess is actually more correct.
Yeah, that's true. And so I know people that are okay with existing in spaces that they are allowed to exist in. Someone who is non-binary and very gay and yada yada, probably insert other shit here, that alt-right people detest. I am not okay with existing in those spaces because I know that they wish me harm or non-existence.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm personally not okay with being in spaces where they're still there.
Yeah. There was a conversation that happened this week in another group that I'm in, that we were talking about a symbol which isn't widely known as a red flag. And we were discussing why this was the case. And it really was a case of the symbol became permeated in pagan spaces before the advent of the internet. So it's a case of having to unlearn some of the associations of certain symbols and actually doing some significant catching up, as it were. Yeah, it was a case of this one being created by a Nazi. It wasn't the Black Sun. I'm being weirdly vague about it because I know there's something happening in the background about a project that we're working on, so that's why I'm being vague. But
yeah, he's created some runes and stuff like that, none that are present in the rune poems or the younger Elder Futhark or the Anglo-Saxon runes. None of those. I can't remember the names of them. Kenna might. Sif might.
The Armanen runes, the ones that Liszt made.
Yeah.
Yes, those.
Yeah.
So the Nazis did create stuff like that, or alt-right people created stuff like that.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why I'm being so vague about it. It is a known symbol. It's the Irminsul.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually
it's
the Irminsul.
And it's a case of a lot of, say, pagans from 20, 30 years ago just have no knowledge of that having dodgy foundations. It's obviously a historical symbol, but the way we see it these days is informed by someone with, let's say, not great political leanings. So yeah, so that might be the case across many. So what you'll see now is kind of younger heathens kind of being like, oh, okay, so we've got to almost like strip these out, and then older heathens, not all of them, but some of them being a little bit hesitant to remove them because they've always had that association of being not horrible.
Yeah, the
symbols.
unlearning of that can be obnoxious.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway.
So wait, where did the ermine soul come from then?
It's attested pre-Nazis, in that it is attested historically.
Okay.
We just don't have any idea what it looked like.
Yeah.
And some guy drew it up, and then everyone's ran with that since.
Okay. So we know that a symbol called the ermine soul existed. We do not know that the version that we see drawn is that symbol, because a jackass drew that symbol and called it the ermine soul, and everyone went, all right, cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Got it.
So yeah, we don't have any of that. That sort of after commentary never kind of like leaked into the pagan spaces. It was just, this is the ermine soul.
Right.
Yeah, so that's an interesting conversation that's happening literally right now in heathen spaces.
Heathen discourse.
Heathen discourse, modern, up-to-date stuff, and how to potentially work our way around that.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's interesting.
Delightful.
But yeah, before we get too focused on the path towards radicalization, we should probably touch on the ways in which some new and indeed experienced pagans can trip up when it comes to appropriation, which is not the same as being radicalized to extremism, but I feel fits quite nicely into this episode and topic.
Sure.
This is something that we see pop up quite a lot in that, like in leftist pagan circles, of people not wanting to step on other people's toes, to put it lightly. So we've spoken at length previously about the fact that heathenry has never been a closed religion or practice. The Viking Age, Nordic and Germanic people didn't close off their beliefs to anyone who wanted to worship the gods. And we can see that simply by how they integrated into the places that they traded with and eventually settled in. So ultimately, if you're a heathen, it's going to come down to not taking practices from living, struggling cultures in the modern day. So when we're talking about heathenry, this most readily applies to the Sami.
Yes.
And it is quite a large issue, especially in content creation. I mean, there are easy ways to avoid it, and that's just simply by keeping anything Sami at a wide berth and doing some research and not buying, for instance, example off the top of my head, Sami drums made by non-Sami individuals and things of that nature. Because it is an invite-only and closed practice. So the best thing that we can do is either support native Sami individuals if we do buy anything, or make sure that their sacred items and practices aren't diluted and sold to the masses by a non-initiated individual. And here it is just a matter of respect.
Talking about you, Freya Norling.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, no, this one comes up a lot, and it is, I'm not going to excuse appropriation. I am going to say sometimes people genuinely don't know because of the way that content creators, like Freya Norling, peddle Sami practices as heathen.
Well, also, did, like, you know, for people not knowing, did you ever get a dream catcher as a kid?
No.
Like, it was a thing. Like, even in, like, public schools today, like, my niece brought home a dream catcher that they made at school.
Yep, very common.
I was just, like, cringed a bit. I mean, it's pretty. It's not like it's definitely not like an official dream catcher. Like if you were going to go with that, like it's just it's a decoration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fun.
I wish they wouldn't do that. Basically, like very passionately wish they wouldn't do that.
Very agree.
I mean, I think we can tie this in as a segue.
Oh, can we?
in that I know that dream catchers, for instance, are quite, that at least over here in the UK, they're kind of symbolic of New Age,
right?
like beliefs, and people kind of unconsciously separate the dream catcher from its cultural origins. And obviously, there is a lot of New Age alt-right pipeline stuff.
That's true.
That is actually quite a topical sort of thing at the moment in terms of New Age people finding their way to alt-right extremism, which we'll probably get onto a bit more in a bit. But yeah, anyway, as you will.
Here's my thing. And I don't... So many people that I'm familiar with, I'm going to say a slur, and I apologize in advance. But they do not realize that gypsy is a title for Roma people and wanderers. Is a slur. And so, like, whenever I go around New Age spaces, I see shops and stuff that use that word in their name, and they have like a fucking dream catcher that's 3 feet wide in their front window, and I'm just like,
oh, it's like appropriation bingo.
Well, I mean, even boho and bohemian is appropriated.
And like, the white spiritualists, which is a generalization I'm aware I'm making, love that shit.
Yeah, they do. Well, and it's like it's an official style title now. Like, that is directly people profiting off appropriation.
America is a fun place.
Oh my god. But yeah, like, I've also had to like inform people that, like, you know, the phrase gypped with a J.
Yeah. Like, it's bad.
You realize that's based off a slur, right? Like, it's bad. But also, like, in where I live, we have I explained this to Kenna. I don't know if I've talked to you about it, Sif, but we have what we call Indian summer in the fall, which is like 1 week in the fall after stuff has gotten chilly, where it warms up to like the 70s again, and then it goes back to fall. It's like, wow, that's
we're
fucking
just gonna
awful.
name it that.
Oh yeah, no, and that's what it's called.
Yep.
Like, it's just like, can we call it anything else?
No.
I think
you understand.
It's
Okay, sorry.
No, it's I think it's important when we're talking about this, because I know that it can be quite an uncomfortable topic for people in terms of the sort of uncomfortable, but you need to hear it. And I know that as soon as you mention appropriation in some circles, they're just like, whoa. You know, there's no such thing as cultural appropriation. I do want to heavily emphasize this, that it's about, and this is an important thing in heathenry as well, respect. And making sure that cultures and practices don't die out because they're being exploited by individuals that don't belong to that culture and practice. So if you approach it from that mindset and just reevaluate, if you know, some things that if you've potentially ever dipped a toe into this, just think about it and have a conversation with yourself and improve from there. And obviously this is something that, as someone who's British and as someone who is English, it's very, very, very important for me and anyone else in the same circle, in that it is an uncomfortable topic.
It is.
And obviously, putting aside things on the more global scale, there is a lot of colonization and wiping away culture that is happening on home turf. And just a little skip across the shore. So while the lines are less defined in some cases in, say, the Sami culture and native North American practices, in that chances are if you're English, you potentially have Scottish, Welsh, Irish, Manx, etc. relatives. We also need to take the effort to champion the voices of the people who want to preserve their practices. So obviously it's no secret that the British government have been pretty shit, to put it mildly, in terms of wiping out languages, for instance. can't remember the exact thing that it was, but it was like no Welsh that they used to hang around children's necks to basically say don't speak Welsh.
Yeah.
And that's just a tiny, tiny fraction of the sort of thing that's happened and is still happening. So it's a case of, if you're describing yourself as a Norse or Anglo-Saxon heathen, then this would stray slightly out of the territory. And to be honest, it's one of those things that I found quite appealing as a recon heathen, in that I knew that for most of this sort of thing, I was safe, quotation marks, little rabbit ears. But it's something to keep in mind. So be a good ally, signal boost, let others speak loudly about the issues that are impacting them, and make sure we don't lose the practices and cultures entirely. So it's about preservation and hopefully slow growth.
And also,
and that wasn't. No, that's. I'm just going on, and so yeah, that is crucial. It is not just a thing that's affecting other places. It's not it's happening on the other side of the world. It is happening. Maybe not as much as it was 100 years ago, but it is still happening here and now, and we've got to take an effort to help repair some of the damage.
Not even 100 years ago, even just like 10 years ago. For now. Well, okay, I'm also thinking about the US.
Yeah, the US is very good at doing that.
Yeah. Like, I'm talking... the thing that readily comes to my mind are the schools, the residential schools.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of which, the last ones closed their doors not even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
The United States and most of North America has a very awesome propaganda machine that has somehow convinced us that all of these things happened in the far off past. And it's not all that far away.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah. It wasn't even that long ago that in a lot of reservations, the hospitals women would give birth and would forcefully sterilize them after their first baby so they couldn't have more.
And I'm sure that this transition from dream catchers to forced sterilization of Native American women seems really intense if you aren't all the way engrossed in how those things are connected. So if you're new to this and you're like, oh God, how did we get here? Don't worry about it. These things are connected because of the way that spiritualism is practiced, especially in areas like the United States. The transition from dreamcatcher to white sage to Native American rights to forced sterilization is a lot shorter of a path than you think once you start looking at it. These things are all connected.
Yeah. And it's equally, there is another layer of sickeningness, that's not a word, about the idea of commodifying the dreamcatcher and being like, oh, this is a really cool thing, and then also villainizing the people.
Right. And before we move on from...
It's not my area of expertise.
Before we move on from this, I do want to say, there is a part of the human brain that is going to want to defend anything that you have already been a part of, whether or not it was right. If you grew up in a place where dream catchers were super common and you didn't know that it was totally the result of an appropriation and erasure of a practice, you're probably feeling a little defensive right now. That's normal.
Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to feel that defense and that discomfort, because that's kind of part of the learning process here. Think about why that feels like a direct personal attack on you and whether or not that feeling is the truth. Because you can feel it, and it can still not be true. Critical thought and self-reflection are the key points to avoiding things like alt-right pipelines. Because these pipelines are relying on you thinking with your feelings and not your brain.
Well,
100%.
Most groups that will take you through the alt-right pipeline or assist you in the process, they don't come with swastikas emblazoned on their... Okay, some of them do, but most of them don't. They don't come with swastikas emblazoned on their logos and shit like that. They do charity work. They help their local community. They look appealing
Yeah, and that's on purpose.
Well, and it's like, oh, well, they're doing charity work and they're helping to clean up their neighborhood. They can't be bad, right? Or like, even for the alt-right pipeline, like, the alt-right has all flavors of people. Like, it's like, oh, they're bisexual. They can't be alt-right. It's like, but they can actually.
Yeah, what they're effectively doing the frog in a pot of boiling water thing, where what they present to you at the beginning is something that seems innocent enough. And as you get deeper into the way that they operate, the symbols that they try to use, the way they approach topics like gender, sexuality, appropriation, will get a little more questionable. And what they're doing is hoping that you'll look at those earlier things they showed you and go, yeah, but they're doing charity work, so they can't be all that bad. Meanwhile, they're edging you closer toward getting comfortable with things that are more outright red flag dog whistles.
Yeah. I also want to clarify that, like, anyone who has... Sorry, someone just started up a fucking leaf blower. Right now, buddy. But anyways, so, like, we're not saying that anyone who's unknowingly done cultural appropriation in the past is bad. Or anything like that. Like, or is alt-right. It takes a lot of things to be the alt-right.
Yeah, you're not accidentally doing that.
Yeah. So, like, we're not saying that. I just wanted to clarify that here. Like, so we're not calling anyone who's, like, unknowingly appropriated or, like, had a shitty take once in the past alt-right.
Oh, man, I guarantee you, every heathen you have ever known, as even the ones that are champions for Indigenous voices, started off with a bad take. Which is not to discredit them. That actually is something that I respect a lot. Because I have also had bad takes, and I have been gently corrected. I have also been aggressively corrected. And had to do that whole thing where I go, am I reacting or am I listening? And talk myself out of the intense defensiveness that I felt.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, yeah.
It happens.
Well, and I've also lost friends in the past over an accidental bad take. Like, I used the phrase medicine woman for a practice I was looking at. That was an initiatory practice that I was in the process of being initiated into. But, like, I didn't use the word quite correctly. And it really offended my friend, and they decided to not be friends after that. And that's okay. Like, I have learned from that mistake, but, like, we also have to recognize, like, okay, so, like, the way I see it is you're holding a plate, and the plate is your friendship. Something bad happens, and you drop the plate, and it breaks. Like, if it's bad enough. And so the plate is broken. You can choose to put it back together, but it's never going to be quite the same again. Like, if it was really bad. I don't know. Does this make sense?
I think it does.
Okay. Like if upset happens, like the hand moves. If something happens, like the plate might drop, but depending on how bad it is, it might drop on like a pillow, or like if it's super bad, it might drop on like cement floor and break. It's like you can choose to put it back together, or if you don't, that's like, if you need help putting it back together and someone else says no, they don't want to help you put it back together, that's their choice.
Like, you're still responsible for your own plates.
Yeah. So it's like, no, it's their choice. And honestly, like, especially in that situation, like was I upset at first? Yes. But like, I took time to evaluate it and stuff, and it's like, well, that sucks, but I understand. Like, these are people, like I'm white, and I haven't had to face the racism and the systematic oppression that they've had to face. So, like, if something like that happens and they decide, like, this is too much for me, It's valid.
No, absolutely.
All right.
Why is he leaf blowing stuff?
No, I'm sorry.
All right.
Me. This episode comes
them.
with a side of leaf blower.
Featuring a leaf blower.
My
leaf blower guy.
I wish my press space to talk worked.
So, to quickly summarize and lead into the next one, the alt-right pipeline basically feeds and nurtures any sort of discomfort and hate and I was going to say
I believe in you.
Words have failed me. I was discontent. Is that what I said that already?
Discontent is a good one.
Okay. Words like that are like that. Look them up, thesaurus wise, and then creates them into something ugly.
So it takes
and hateful.
Within the alt-right as a movement is very dependent on reactive points of view and an internal feeling of disenfranchisement. The point is that you already feel a little left out. We're going to pour gasoline on that fire so that you side with us.
Yeah, it's the idea of not being heard or feeling like you're not being heard.
It's like people to, like, you know how you have like gay pride or like Pride Day or whatever month. It's like people that are like, well, what about straight pride?
While that seems super ridiculous to us, right? Because we have a solid understanding of the power issues and dynamics happening here. The core feeling there is that they're left out. Something about them is left out.
Well, they feel like we're not being celebrated. Why are we celebrating the gays? Or
and of course, that's going to hinge on a little bit of homophobia and probably transphobia and also probably misogyny. Those things are all in there. The point is still that their internal experience is this weird disenfranchisement that makes them feel like they're the ones who aren't allowed. There are some mental gymnastics happening here. We will not deny that.
Yeah.
We saw that a lot with Black Lives Matter and the resurgent All Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter.
White Lives
and it's a case of it's the understanding that this has been the norm. You know, this is happening because they've been ignored for centuries. Now is not the time to try and overshadow what's happening. It's a time to sit back and listen. And then
you go ahead, Sif.
Oh no,
One of the psychological backflips that you see happening, and it's really exemplified by the reactionary white lives, all lives matter thing, is the idea that when people say Black Lives Matter, what racist white people are hearing is Black people are going to take our place. They are aware of the power dynamic, and that reactionary fear is that they are now going to be at a lower rung on the power dynamic ladder, which is why their reaction is so intense. It is not a logical reaction. That is what this movement hinges on. Reactionary, fear-based opinions to very normal and reasonable statements.
Well, I mean, and it's like, okay, I'm going to say this. I know I'm probably just prolonging this episode. But like, having rights is not like getting a piece of pie. Like, there's not one pie that is all human rights and everyone gets a slice. And like, if someone else gets a slice, like, you're going to get less pie. It's not how rights work. Like, okay, I know a cis white woman who long ago was applying for
I thought you said cis white woman. I have a white woman?
I mean, I don't know, do you?
Don't know.
But she was applying for medical school. You know, she got good grades. Really good grades, and she was really dedicated. She got really good scores on the fucking tests you have to do before you go to medical school. And like, she actually, when she applied, she ranked really high. She didn't get accepted because, like, when you apply to medical school, I'm sure people know, but like, there are only so many spots that you can fill. A lot of people apply to medical school, and so she didn't get accepted. She got put on a wait list, which honestly is still impressive. And she went for like a follow-up interview to be like, why didn't I get accepted? And the conclusion she came up with, instead of like, you know, like there were just people who did better than you, was it's because I'm white. They have to fill their quotas for diversity, which is one of the cringiest statements ever. And honestly, I'm like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be a physician if this is your viewpoint. Because if you're going to be a physician, you're not just going to see fucking white people. I mean, you might, I guess. I'm sure those facilities exist. But like, gross. But anyways, like, so, but like, I understand when she said that she was coming from a place of hurt. Like, she doesn't really have a lot of, she has some cringe takes, whatever. But beyond that, like, her, I think now husband is a person of color and stuff like that. So like, she's not mega racist. When I say mega racist, I'm talking like people who belong to the Ku Klux Klan and Nazis and stuff like that. Like, but even a white woman who's married to a man of color, like, still has systematic oppression things to process and like go through. Like, you still do benefit from being a cis white woman. Anyways, as I said, I'm probably just prolonging this episode. My brain was like, you need to say it though.
No, it's important.
It is. Like, yeah. But like, so it's like, society has a lot of problems. And actually, like Kenna said, using critical thinking and evaluating and like processing those issues is really important.
Cognitive behavioral therapy is really good and important because looking at your reactions and why you're having those reactions is very helpful in terms of being a human person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important as well to...
Fucking God, I'm gonna go break that leaf blower.
How many leaves are there?
A lot.
Surely.
An unbelievable amount.
God damn it, Kenna. God damn it.
It's... oh God. Dying. Okay.
That's not allowed.
We're doing great.
I will go fight hell. I will.
Just get everyone in the world to cry for me, it'd be fine.
Perfect.
Okay. Millie,
we know what
ready?
her things are.
You ready? Let's do this. Millie's just staring at me like, what the fuck do you want from me?
Now is not the time.
Anyways.
I think it's also relevant in these sorts of conversations to recognize where there are deficiencies in certain areas, like, for instance, men's mental health. Because I know that feeds quite tightly into the idea of incel culture. And obviously that is incredibly valid, and we need to do more about men's mental health just across everything.
Okay, for a second I thought you were saying incel culture was valid, and I was like, Sif,
no,
we need
men's mental health.
This. Yes,
like
yes, it
listeners,
is.
men's mental health is important and valid.
Actual functional addressing of mental health issues and crises that men and mask people face is important.
Yes.
So that we don't accidentally flip into the to the incel pipeline.
Oh, incels.
Oh, yes. But yes, the incel pipeline is essentially sexism, misogyny, and violence. And it's a similar story for white supremacy and the path to get there. Now, I think we have spoken at length about white supremacy and heathenry. It is an issue. It is prevalent. I've seen some content creators try to downplay or dismiss the role of white supremacy and heathenry. I think that is completely foolish and incorrect.
Yes.
It doesn't take a genius to find white supremacists in heathenry, and there are far more than they like to believe or say there are. They're a thing, and as inclusive heathens, we have to tackle them. And it's clear to see, with just the briefest of sort of knowledge and insight into all of this, where things can start to happen. In some spaces, heathenry is seen as this hyper-masculine alternative to Christianity, essentially subbing in the Christian god for a bloodthirsty Odin, with all the goddesses playing support roles that reinforce, in their mind, the traditional housewife archetype. We see this with the Ossetru Folk Assembly and their focus on white women giving birth to white children, purity of the bloodline bullcrap.
Oh Lord, that flavor of heathenry makes me experience feelings. You see it a lot with Odinism too. We'll just cross out God and put Odin up there.
Yeah,
just
essentially.
This is a thing that I have talked about with one of my friends who's in the Marine Corps, because they have a lot of heathens in the Marine Corps because hoorah or whatever. I'm not going to go into the specifics of that. He asked me something about why or how Odin is so powerful, and I'm like, dude, he's a cross-dresser. He's a gender bender by nature. He's this angsty poet that walks around trying to figure out new words to make better rhymes.
He goes around in disguise and fights with Thor.
Yeah. So my friend was like, "Wait, so why are all of my very masculine pick up heavy things, put heavy things down people into this guy? Like, because they like the war part and ignore the gender bending part?"
Yeah, it's very words. Yeah, selective cherry picking. The parts about Odin and the lore around him that appeal to their perspective of what heathenry is. And I have a great amount of respect for Odin, but I think it's doing him a disservice to limit him to one aspect. He is a war god.
Yes.
But at the same time, he is a poet, and he's a traveler and a wanderer.
I was going to say, which North Heathen deities aren't war gods?
All our gods are...
Imagine playing Guess Who with the Norse gods. Is your god a war god? What sort of fucking question is that?
It's like, all right, it's not a Dune.
Yeah, you can now get rid of a good solid one.
Literally. Excelling, clearly.
But to be fair, if you're playing Guess Who with the Norse deities, that could be a good question if the other person has a Dune.
This is true.
This is true.
1% chance.
if you for some reason playing Guess Who, the Norse gods.
Somebody get on that.
I would play that in a heartbeat.
I would too. Honestly, it could be a really great way to learn the deities.
Oh, yes.
Heathenry for kids.
Nope.
Kickstarter.
With Heathens Are Us.
Heathen Wyrdos, Kickstarter.
No.
Heathen Gods. Okay, right. Okay, something that the media loves to paint heathenry as is they see heathenry as the white supremacist religion. Gross, grim, not at all true. We won't get too much into that detail. I think we've spoken about it before, but we do see the alt-right's adoption of heathen symbols, from the Charlottesville protesters waving flags adorned with Mjolnir, the QAnon shaman with his shitty Mjolnir, Volknut, and Yggdrasil tattoos, and then you have Anders Breivik with naming his gun Gungnir, Odin's spear.
All of that is straight up regurgitation of Nazi talking points.
Oh yeah, and it all goes back to that. Yeah.
Whole hot damn QAnon asshole with his stupid horned helmet. Dude, I could be wrong, and I would love to be corrected. Dude was a Christian.
Yeah, he is.
He's just wearing our stuff for the vibes. It's like,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it goes beyond saying that this is infuriating because every time they're seen wearing those symbols, the media is like, look, it's another white supremacist person wearing Nordic symbols, and it's enforcing that association between the two. So it makes my blood boil. We need to fight for the symbols. We need to wear them when we can, when it's safe to do so, with pride, and to inform people that they are not hate symbols. The extreme right does not and will not own them.
Yeah.
Which
that makes me crazy.
Oh no, I hate
Nobody would ever say that about crosses.
No. It's from a place of misinformation and ignorance, but we are, for the time being, at least in the minority. There's not that many heathens in the grand scheme of things, so.
Correct.
Yet. That is a threat.
Oh god.
Okay.
So as heathens, what do we do? Well, it's important to steer away from language that reinforces this really shit perspective. For instance, there is no one true indigenous European religion. The European culture hasn't been destroyed or diluted by others. It's always been this incredibly varied region with so many different beliefs and cultures. And you see this across a lot of places, actually. Framing it as this white haven is ahistorical and ignorant. It's never been that.
Even heathenry has never been fully white. Like,
no.
They traveled, they adopted people, they brought them into their families. They weren't always white people.
No. And their trade network was vast.
Yeah, it was.
You struggle to trade with people if you outwardly hate them.
Correct. Also,
that's just a basic rule.
My baby cousin had to tell me that Elmo fell off the couch and is now going into the hospital on my mother's bed. It's very important.
Did the dolls push Elmo off the couch?
No. Don't know quite how Elmo got off the couch. She's staring at me while I'm talking. It's really funny.
I guess quite a lot of this as heathens also comes down to having those views about race really does strip the agency from the gods, and it's framing you as an individual as being able to speak for them in terms of their wants and wishes, which it doesn't sit right with anyone, I'm sure, but it doesn't sit right with me. So yes, heathenry, we've said this a million times, is open. It is shared. The gods don't care about race or genetics. I'm sure they would let someone know if they did. They're not bound to geography. They don't lack agency. It's very much a case of the more the merrier. And this is all in the foundations of heathenry. It's the kind of guest rights. Come on in, have some mead, sit by the fire. We'll look after you, traveler. Let's tell some stories. I mean, there's this case of how dare you say that Thor doesn't want someone worshipping him? How dare you speak on behalf of Thor? That really comes into the fore here. And so what we're seeing now in terms of heathenry and in pagan spaces as a whole is this big tug of war against those that believe that heathenry is this white religion, white indigenous European religion for white people only, and those like us, the Wyrdos, and so many other inclusive pagan/heathens that believe that worshipping these gods and respecting the land is for anybody that wants to. So in terms of the wider pagan space, we see this idea quite a lot with the association of the divine feminine with childbirth, leading down a spiraling staircase of traditional gender roles, and relatively recently of the idea of gender being a metaphysical thing set in the divine. that also leads into transphobia and transphobe territory with just a small skip and a step. So, anywhere else that you can think of in terms of examples about in the larger, not necessarily heathen pagan space?
Definitely that divine gender. That's something that's been coming up. Maybe I'm just dumb and haven't noticed it as hard until recently. It's getting real weird.
It is.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it's getting more prominent, I think, in the last 5 years or so when people are trying to remove gender from their praxis.
Yeah.
Because you do have, it's not all older pagans, but I think some of them are quite rigid in terms of that's the masculine, that's the feminine. Those are the two categories, just the two binary categories.
Yeah.
And everything else is just doesn't exist. And I'm quite glad to see that kind of removing those boundaries that's happening. Obviously, some are still holding on to them, but we're seeing that change happening.
Well, and like some people I've seen defense where it's like, well, but like you don't understand divine gender then because everything has both masculine and feminine energy in them. And it's like, we really need to define them by masculine and feminine though? Like that just seems outdated and sexist. Like, can we please just move past it?
Yeah, I think some of it also, as with most things that eventually devolve into reinforcing traditional strict gender roles and things, a lot of times these downward spirals begin with the idea of reclamation. I think a lot of this divine gender stuff has kind of spiraled out from the feminine reclamation of the divine feminine, trying to take that back. It has spiraled back on itself.
Like Dianic
that
Wicca.
Makes any amount of sense. Yeah, it's Dianic Wicca. It started out with this idea that women and femme people wanted to reclaim the divinity of their gender, which based at the beginning.
Well, I mean,
unfortunately,
you can't even say for Dianic Wicca women and femme people. Like it's just cis woman.
Yeah,
Dianic Wicca deserves less attention.
It does.
It's very unfortunate because even as we get into things like, I'm thinking about movement of feminism and how it eventually split into feminist and TERF.
Yeah.
Started out, both of those approaches to feminism started out with the idea of reclaiming femininity as something valuable and good. Somewhere along the way, one of those hit that alt-right pipeline.
Yeah.
That anger, that distrust, and that feeling of disenfranchisement went a step too far. And now they're governing their entire approach to femininity based on anger and fear. Which is whack.
I find I don't want to give them too much like oxygen in the room, but the turfy rhetoric really fascinating in one aspect because it is pushing feminism back to the 50s again.
Yeah. It is.
Where
it's quite literally a spiral because we're getting right back to that beginning point that you thought you were getting away from.
Yeah, it's narrowing the definition of woman down to just femme for the most part, childbearing. And it's like, are you really going to like how a woman looks and whether they can bear children as the definition here?
You just got a feminist so hard we get back to misogyny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it boggles my mind.
I think that's
I can't figure it out.
It's a really good example to kind of ground what we're talking about when we say like heathen alt-right groups are going to take a symbol or an idea that it's at the surface feels okay and spiral it back around right back to racism.
Yeah.
This is a really good example. We started out with the idea of reclaiming femininity. And then we ended up at transphobia.
Yeah.
And now we're back to defining women by their ability to birth a child. It's that cycle. It's quite literally a spiral downward.
Yeah.
We're talking about.
Ugh.
Super fun. We're having so much fun today.
Who asked for this topic? It's important, but
We
still.
all did.
Did we? I mean, yeah, that's true. Actually, I can't even joke about that.
It's important.
It
and
is.
I want everybody who is listening to us talk and deflect this with bad insertions of humor to understand that we are also uncomfortable, and that is okay. This is not a fun thing to talk about or listen to or hear. Sometimes we can do uncomfortable things, especially when they're important.
There's just so much hate in the world. I hate it.
Their hate causes
That's so
my
hateful.
hate.
Oh my god.
I hate that fucking leaf blower.
This is the thing. I mean, I think we're okay to hate the leaf blower.
Thank you for your support and validation, Sif.
That's okay. Something. Just don't hate people. Fuck it. You can hate people that hate other people.
Hate
but
people.
If we didn't hate each other, that'd be great.
Hate people or dislike people for their actions.
Yeah, not what they look like.
Or identify.
Hate them with substance.
Or identify. Or anything.
Yeah.
I know we've been going on for a slight while, so we'll go at it. So how do you avoid the alt-right pipeline? Well, it's about keeping an eye on the red flags and dog whistles. It's about knowing the definition and the difference between cultural appropriation and cultural exchange. You know, I know a lot of people who kind of get all uppity about that. There is a difference. Learn it.
Was it handed to you, or did you take it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also about power dynamics. So I've seen this is actually very applicable. I've seen some Scandinavian heathens say that you have to be Scandinavian to be heathen. And it's like, do you know history? A simple history lesson will just solve that for you and Kenna's going. But okay, so how do we avoid it generally? Declaration of Deeds, keep an eye out for that, and the Declaration 127. If you see those words, you know that the group or person or community you're interacting with is fundamentally inclusive. They believe that if you see evil, call it evil, and in this case, the evil is the white supremacists and people of that nature. And just being aware of your own... Well, do your own research.
So,
carry on, Theo. I'm just going to be going off.
Fine. I do have something to add, because the Declaration of Deeds and 127 do not include inclusivity for disability.
Yes.
So that is very...
Is something happening about that?
I think Ocean Keltoy is kind of trying to do stuff about it, but is meeting a lot of resistance. And
right.
But just, be aware, because it doesn't include anything for disability inclusion and stuff like that. So if you do see those, yes, that group is probably better, but does not mean all of them are inclusive. So don't be afraid to ask questions. That's probably something that Sif is going to talk about, is don't be afraid to ask questions. And if people won't answer your questions, that's a red flag.
Oh yeah, you see this a lot with asking a question that is basically yes or no, and they'll jump around the topic.
Or they give you this 3-paragraph essay about why they can't actually answer that.
Yeah. And it's chances are, if you actually support it, you'll just say yes. It's really that simple. I support this, yes. Yeah, do your research, ask questions. And Kenna, do you want to talk about what about when you see friends leaning towards the right or going down the pipeline?
It's no one's favorite, is it? No, not great. But
like the leaf blower.
Yeah, fuck that leaf blower. So the first and most important key point is that our friends are not inherently your responsibility. Which is a weird thing to say. I'm going to elaborate. So there's degrees to which a friend can be inching down that alt-right pipeline. Depending on your ability to counteract it, You may find that they are at a point that you can no longer intervene, and that's okay. Because you are not your friend's keepers. They are responsible for their own choices. Now, if they're at a point where you feel you can still intervene, make a difference, be a good person, all of that, love that for you. Don't burn yourself out trying to save someone. Appreciate that you can do what you can. You can't change anybody's mind. You can, however, probe to the best of your ability and recognize when you are out of your depth.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to pull people back from the edge of radicalization is not easy. It is only harder to de-radicalize them completely. Don't go in thinking you're going to fix it, because you probably won't. There are whole psychological approaches to de-radicalizing people. Friendship is not a de-radicalization program.
Oh my god, right?
Don't assume that you can fix it just because you're friends. And don't beat yourself up if you're unable to.
I've had many an intervention towards my Captain Marvelness. that was a inevitable pipeline.
Yes, the Captain Marvel pipeline.
Yeah, it's once you're on that slippery slope, there is no coming back.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
God.
Just for a little bit of levity in this shit show.
We are deflecting because this is uncomfortable. Yep. That's okay.
Yes.
So, as many people are aware, when radicalization stems from a lot of feelings, feeling angry, feeling excluded, and not feeling heard by whatever system they're choosing to blame. It's going to be really uncomfortable. If you want people to hear you, you have to hear them first. So you might have to sit there and listen to them bitch and moan about a thing that seems ridiculous to you. Listening is not the same as validating, and it is not the same as supporting whatever rant they're on. Be aware of that going in. Because if their thing is something that is going to trigger a fight or flight response in you, have a bad time. You have to go in with the awareness that they are actively in a fight or flight state. They're angry and feeling feelings. They're not thinking about what they're saying. They're feeling. They are not going to start thinking until they get the feelings out. Which sucks. You're trying to listen and not validate whatever bullshit point you're regurgitating from Ben Shapiro.
Or Jordan.
It's not great, is it?
Yeah.
The hard part is managing your own reaction to that. Because they don't, I'm not going to say they don't mean it. They don't, people who are edging on radicalization don't always understand that when they're talking about, air quotes, them, the people who are attacking them, they don't always know that they're talking about you.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see people gay are taking away this, or I'm not going to continue because it's not a fun thing to say, but I trust that you all understand where my brain is going.
Guys.
They don't always realize that under that umbrella they're talking about you too, and that's going to hurt your feelings a lot. If you want to help them, if you are in a position where you are able to communicate with them, you're going to have to find a way to manage your reactions. Because 2 people at an 11 are not going to make progress.
Cool.
Great.
Hey guys.
Mm-hmm.
The leaf blower stuff.
Do you hear that?
It's silent.
Sweet fucking sound of silence.
Beautiful.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. Please go on.
You're so good. Same way that we manage our reactions, that behavioral therapist intervention that we do, where we go, okay, I'm feeling this kind of way. I wonder why I'm reacting this way. What is it about these words that is triggering this reaction in me? I'm going to start saying those things out loud. So when they say gays are taking over the school system, you're not going to say no, they're not. because that directly puts them on the defensive again, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say why. What are you seeing? Where is that belief coming from? From there, what does that belief have to do with you? We're going to start deconstructing why they're taking this big umbrella statement that something stupid is doing something stupid somewhere. Working on deconstructing those beliefs and breaking them down into the little stupid Legos that built the stupid idea is probably the most helpful approach.
Stupid Legos.
Or stupid Legos. But once you start, doesn't mean you have to finish it. If you find that they are at a point where you cannot effectively communicate with them, you are not a bad person for walking away.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people going into the alt-right pipeline won't understand why you're talking to them about it. Like, you know, they're not, especially like if a group is like oh, okay. I've seen it happen before with content creators where like other groups will send people in to basically infiltrate, get familiar, get people to like them and stuff, and that's when, like, you know, they build that bridge, they build the trust, and that's when they start introducing these ideas. So when that happens, they don't send the scariest, most red flaggiest person they have. Like, they're going to send someone who is friendly, is like someone you'll like it'll be something like there are people that are alt-right that are genetically Jewish and stuff like that, or even not straight, like they might be a member of the LGBT community, so like they'll send people like that depending on whatever group it is, and that way like people are like, well, they're not alt-right, what the fuck are you talking about, like they're Jewish or they're gay or whatever, like they're not alt-right. And it's like, aren't they? Are you sure? Like, that's just where the critical thinking part comes in, where it's like you need to be aware of things and stuff.
And pay attention to all of the times that you go, well, but they're a good person. Every time that you have to justify that to yourself, it's almost, I'm going to use a relationship analogy. If you are in a relationship and you are constantly going, oh, but they didn't mean it. But they didn't mean it like that. They didn't know what they were doing. Every time that you do that, add like a tally to your red flag list, because it's going to get pretty massive pretty fast.
Yeah, if you have to convince yourself that someone's not shitty, like, consistently, it's a red flag.
We're, of course, going to advocate for leaving room for mistakes and growth. The key point is that when things become a pattern, the pattern doesn't change, that's when we want to start using those critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And we're having a fucking blast today.
Literally.
Super fun topics. No. No, I'm just deflecting because this isn't fun.
Leaf blower came to
No. Do you want to end it?
Blast.
Mm-hmm. A lot of hot air being spewed.
Lots of leaves moving around.
Leaf blower is our only solace in this hellscape conversation.
Is it?
Right. Okay. I will move towards closing this episode. We've covered quite a lot in this hour also.
Wow. It has been an hour, hasn't it?
Yeah.
A solid hour of us actually talking.
Yeah, and half an hour of us not. Okay, so we've covered the definition of the alt-right pipeline. We have talked about appropriation and heathenry. about not taking things from the Sami or Native Indigenous North American practices. We've talked about actual alt-right pipelines, a little bit of incel culture there, how alt-right presents itself in heathenry, how white supremacy presents itself in heathenry, how we definitely need to keep using our symbols so they don't be overtaken by Nazis, how there's a bit of a tug of war going on between the left and the right in heathenry, and in pagan spaces we've talked about some transphobia and how do we avoid this, critical thinking skills, looking out for Declaration of Deeds, Declaration 127, and then we've finally rounded everything down with what do you do when you see people close to you, friends, family, etc., who are going down the alt-right pipeline, and what to do in that respect. So if we have finished, I will.
I think so.
Yes, we'll probably have more to discuss. There might be a part 2. You know, we've both embraced ourselves, and you know, get the spoons to do this again. But
yes,
right. Okay, so we are on Redbubble. We have merch. That merch is cool.
It's also gay.
I want
to.
It's also very gay. We are on Discord. We are recording right now on Discord.
Yes. No eagle buttholes as of yet.
Yes. No eagle buttholes. That is imminent though. We just need to time it when Kenna's
The eagle buttholes are imminent.
Yep. Yes. They'll be winging their way over to us soon, or you, I guess. Dear listeners, we are on Patreon. We do live episode recordings in the Discord Patreon area that you can be a part of. I do some drawings. I do need to finish off this month's drawing. I will get that done ASAP. And early listens, access to episodes and unedited versions of those episodes. What else do we have? Oh, we are on YouTube, which might be where you're listening to this now. But if not, we also have a very expansive podcast network. So we're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Podbay, iVox, whatever that is, etc., etc. We release one episode a week, sometimes on Thursdays, sometimes on Fridays, sometimes on Saturdays, sometimes on Sundays. Like to vary it up. Yeah, I'm trying so hard. And they're longer, with the exception of the one that's premiering in 20 minutes, which is about half an hour. But it's a primer, so it's fine. What else do we do?
Best.
We do our best.
Professionals.
We'll continue. We're professionals. We'll continue to talk about heathenry for as long as people listen to us. We've listened. I mean, yeah, if you're a leaf blower aficionado, maybe you can tell us what sort of leaf blower that is.
How to turn it off.
In the comments section. How to turn it off, yeah.
How do I turn it off from way over here?
Disable.
Someone help me hack that leaf blower.
I'll just throw Millie at them. I won't actually throw Millie.
That could be a good idea. As long as you give her like a parachute, she'll be fine.
Lily's just looking at me with this
Safety
concerned look on her face. I won't throw you, okay?
It's that surely the furs like really like creates drag, so you know, even at terminal velocity, she's fine.
We apparently also do physics here on the Heathen Wyrdos Podcast channel.
Millie, the only place I will throw you is in a pool. A safe pool. God, that sounds terrible. No,
the ocean.
My baby. Why?
Not in the deepest
your breath
point.
Smell like asparagus. Oh.
Okay.
I want to point out that we're not in the same room here.
Talking to the dog.
Anyone that might be listening to this for the first time. Yeah. Right, okay, I think we're done.
Leave a connection between the like, the subscribe, and the bell button. Because we don't have an upload schedule right now, because Sif is doing all of the things all the time, all at once. So you're going to want that bell to know when things go up.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, unless I get made redundant, in which case I'll have all the time ever to do stuff.
There's still only 24 hours in a day, Sif.
This is true. Well, I'll see if I can push that. But anyway, okay, right, well, okay, so if you've been hanging on for this long, just a final word to say, keep heathenry weird. Weird with a Y. W-Y-R-D.
In case you haven't caught that yet.
Yeah.
Just love you guys.
Yeah, that's it. I swear to the gods that leaf blower will be on a t-shirt soon.
Will you be stabbing it on that t-shirt?
Yes. There'll be just like an axe right
or
in the
holding a
middle of
leaf blower. Perfect.
There you go.
Yep.
Thor's blower.
Okay.
We're doing so good. Okay, this episode is over now.
Yeah,
we did it!
I'm gonna kick out Georg.
Woo!
We did it.
Oh, Christ.